As a huge fan of classic arcade games, having played so many of them back in their heyday, and then built my own custom arcade cabinet to revisit them periodically, I've really enjoyed the string of indie titles that have tapped into those vintage feels. Whether it has been in the form of remakes, repurposing, melding of ideas from multiple classics, or just games that would have fit right in with those titles of yesteryear. In general, I've been here for it all. All that said, making a great game in that vein can no doubt be challenging, especially when you're tiptoeing around the difference between honoring classic play and simply copying it. Flora Fang is pretty well right in those crosshairs, by no means simply reskinning a classic, but in terms of core gameplay, still having quite a few similarities. In this case, the classic in question is Donkey Kong 3, a title that certainly gets less love than its predecessors, but unquestionably delivered its own unique experience. Rather than jumping over barrels or avoiding metal snapjaws, the third installment that Flora Fang has absolutely chosen to honor was focused on dealing with insects. Armed with your handy sprayer, your goal is simply to protect your crops from any incoming pests. With action taking place on multiple levels, the challenge is a mix of staying on top of threats, maneuvering into the proper position to spray them without getting hit, and ensuring they don't get away with your stuff. The tricky part is to do this without getting hit, and as the stages progress, there are more varied enemies, and the layouts continue to change. This gets tougher. Early on, it's more difficult to see the differences in the fundamentals of play, but thankfully the further you go, the more you'll see. The fact that you can cluster and then get bonuses for knocking out multiple enemies is a nice touch, and in some ways that gives it a feel reminiscent of the classic Bubble Bobble to a degree. The ability to then gain some upgrades using the coins you grab is also certainly helpful, and will encourage repeated play when you have a bit more of an advantage. There's also no question that pairing up to tackle the stages with a friend is a nice option. But where the game really begins to differentiate itself and go further is in its hidden stages that pay homage to other classics in a variety of ways, and then challenging boss fights that absolutely add flavor. While most of the best retro arcade indie games have tended to be amalgams of multiple titles and influences in one package, in this case the focus is more squarely on one classic, but the inclusion of so many value-added features and surprises absolutely helps to still set it apart. Perhaps younger gamers who won't immediately recognize all of the callbacks and homages won't be as appreciative, but for a vintage gamer like me, there was absolutely a thrill to being transported back to other familiar retro titles for some added fun and nostalgia. The core play style may be a tougher sell for some, explaining why Donkey Kong 3 is more rarely referenced when talking about the franchise, but this is still a fun and sometimes challenging throwback full of surprises for retro fans. Overall, my final score for the game ended up being at 8.2, and if you're interested in picking it up, it's currently available on the Switch eShop for $6.99. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this review. And if you'd like more information or ideas of indie games worth checking out on the Switch or the Switch 2, be sure to click on the link provided in the description. Until next time.